Hi everybody, welcome to my next installment for my little stress management series. So if you've watched a couple of these before, you'll know that I've popped these on YouTube, Facebook and also Instagram when I can figure out how it works. Generally I figure it out. And yeah, this is just sort of a little series really, just to chat about something that I've learned over the years. I'm a stress management practitioner, have been for many, many years now. And it's something that I really, really enjoy doing. I think it's never something you stop learning about. And it's nice to just sort of share information with people. You might be able to pick bits and pieces from this that will apply to your everyday life or certain circumstances, or you might want to share this with somebody if it particularly sort of corresponds to something that you know someone is going through right now. So the thing I'm going to talk about today is communication. And I know you're probably saying, oh, communication, raise eyebrows, eye roll and all this kind of stuff. But communication at the end of the day is something that causes so much more stress than you would realize. And often this is simply just down to, you know, poor communication with other people and not really just expressing ourselves in a way that makes sense to others. Because when you break it down with communication and, you know, you look at your own self-awareness, all communication is really putting into words how you are feeling. Now, as we know, words are just words. They're just things. There's something that was created. We know that with different languages. So one word to somebody may be completely different to somebody else. So actually what we need to do is look at our emotions more than the words that we're using to describe how we feel to someone. Now, the reason I'm talking about this now is because in the last little episode we did, we were talking about mood levels and where you are on a mood table. And it's really, really important when you're talking to people to know where you are on that mood table, especially if you're up here and they're down there, or they're down here and you're up there, or whatever. You know, you want to make sure that you're communicating in a way that's going to be understandable for both of you, not just by the words you're using, but more about emotionally how you're connecting. Now, you know, at the end of the day, as I've said, words, all they are symbols. And, you know, there are different levels of communication that we have. You know, emotionally, rather than just verbally, is something that actually carries a lot more weight than we probably give it credit for. And the other thing that is so important is how we view ourselves. Now, quite often self-image can get completely distorted because we have a certain view of ourselves, which may be completely different to how other people see us. And also sometimes the way we see ourselves, we put, you know, self-limiting beliefs on ourselves. We put, you know, we put our own insecurities on there, and often other people won't see that at all. So it's really, really interesting to try and sort of put yourself almost outside yourself, looking in and see how other people are seeing you and how that may make you relatable in a slightly different way to how you imagine it yourself. So, you know, what we often do when we're talking is we'll talk to somebody, but then we're actually waiting for a reaction from them before we then continue what we're saying. And this can actually be a little bit detrimental to just trying to have a conversation, and especially when you're looking at keeping stress levels down rather than sort of keeping them nice and calm, which can obviously, you know, obviously is what we all want. And I think what we do quite a lot is we will communicate with people without actually waiting to hear what they're responding to say to us. So I'm going to give you a little sort of couple of pointers on things that, you know, might be able to help if you're talking to someone who's particularly stressed or you're really stressed yourself. I've got a little dog just come and put his head on my lap now, so I'm not stressed at all with him. Bless him, little sweetie. I've got girlies in season at the moment, so I've got all the boys in with me, which means we may get a few interruptions, but hey, that's how it goes. So, you know, like I say, you can upset people with what you're saying when you don't realise the emotions that attach to your words. So, you know, sort of often as well, we're talking about emotions being attached to words. When we hear something from somebody else, we will often attach our own emotions to the words that they're saying without really thinking about what the words actually mean to us and looking at what that person is saying to us emotionally. And you know, using a great example of this, you know, in any relationship, whether you're talking about a friendship, with a boss, with a loved one, with a spouse, with a parent, sibling, whatever, quite often because we have already experienced sort of a way of communicating with that person, we will often attach things onto what they're saying without them even having said anything. And it's because we're quite habitual about the way we are. Our brains work in a habit sort of forming way. So, you know, it's like a great example of this is to give an example of dog training. Actually, it's just popped into my head. So when you're training a dog to recall back to you and you use their name, I want you to imagine for a minute that I've got Hudson here, whose head I'm stroking that you can't see. I want you to imagine that I'm trying to call Hudson down from the back of the garden, and I'm calling his name, and I'm calling his name, and he's ignoring me, which he does anyway, actually, because he's a husky and that's what they do. But with a normal dog, for example, you'd be calling their name, and they should come to you. Now, quite often, dogs won't come to you because you've attached an emotion to that word before, and they are playing through the habit in their head of how they're going to respond to it. Now, good example of this is when you're calling your dog back and they don't come back, your voice will get more irate. So you'll be, instead of going, Hudson, Hudson, all nice and light and airy, and here he is, his ears look breaking up, you start saying it in a more angry tone. Well, what happens is when you're saying it angry quite a lot of the time, why is the dog then going to come back to you when you're saying it nicely? Because even though you don't think you've attached an emotion to that word, it has to them. And it is very, very similar with people. If all we do is treat somebody in a certain way and then suddenly we change that and expect them to treat us in a different way, it's very, very difficult to get across. So one little thing that I try and play through, if I want to have a conversation with someone, whatever the situation is, whether it's something where I need to stay quite calm with them, or I want to get my point across, or I'm trying to have a discussion or whatever, is first of all, the key thing is, like I've said, is to try and stay calm, because nobody gets anywhere in communication when you're not being calm with people, because it just, you're both going to just get irate and stressed or whatever, no matter the situation, whether it's with the traffic warden or with your partner or with your mum or whatever. And, what you want to do is you want to, before you start just gobbing out those words, is actually define your needs. So what are you trying to get across to that person? So it could be a traffic warden. You're trying to ask them why they've given you a ticket. So, really think about what you're saying. Or if it's in a relationship, it could be somebody's upset you. You want to define what your needs are. What do you want to get across from this communication with that person? Because actually, if you just go into it without thinking about that, you can go off on a complete tangent and have a conversation about something that is totally random, and that's going to cause you both to get very, very stressed. And then actually communicate with them what your needs are. But the most important thing is to listen. And I think this is quite often what happens, is we don't listen. We're so waiting for somebody to say something that we're expecting them to say, that we don't listen to what they're actually going to say back to us. Now, I'm a big believer in writing, actually. And I think it's quite nice, if you want to have a conversation with someone you are expecting them to get upset with you, is sometimes to write a letter, because you can do all of this quite easily. You can define what your needs are. You're nice and calm when you're writing it, and you can give them that letter. And then once they've had a chance to process what you said, you can then listen to what their response is without having that thing where you're going to be talking over each other and that kind of thing, which does cause a lot of stress. And then basically you just need to keep reevaluating the situation. So it's kind of like very cyclical, in the sense that you're never sometimes always going to trust the fact that you're going to come to a conclusion with somebody without getting stressed out. But it's quite nice to go through that process again and again until you both reach an agreement. And I think this is one thing with stressors and communication, because that's what today's little stress management series is about, is communication being a stressor, is that, quite often we think once we've communicated something that it's done and dusted and we've said our piece, and that isn't always how it works. Sometimes we have to reevaluate the situation and come back to it several times before we get in a place where both parties in the agreement are happy. So I hope that has been helpful for you guys. These sort of things you can apply to anything, thank you, Hudson, from really, sort of life-changing situations to just very, very simple situations. But I think if you are able to communicate with someone without, or rather with being in the right emotional state when you're doing it, if you're able to stay calm, define what your needs are, communicate that with the person, and then listen, then when it comes back to reevaluating, you'll find the whole process a lot easier. You're less likely to get stressed, and hopefully you'll be able to reach an agreement with that person, whatever it may be, whether it's what ice cream to buy or what, or something else far more serious. Anyway, I hope that has been helpful for you guys. Thanks very much for watching. Next week, I'm going to be talking to you about change, which is something that is probably one of the biggest causes of stress out there. Communication is definitely one, but change is certainly the big one, I think. So I'll be talking about that next time. Thanks very much for watching, and I will catch up with you soon. Bye for now.